I'm Crystal. This is the last good memory. My little brother Leo on top of the world, summer of 2001. He was so proud of that stupid taxi keychain he bought at the Empire State Building. He never let it go. 3 months later, he was gone. For 24 years, that smile is all we had left, until a construction worker clearing the woods behind our old house found something in the dirt. If you've ever lived with a question that has no answer, a hole in your life that you just can't fill, maybe this story will make sense to you. Let me know in the comments if you've ever had a memory that felt more like a ghost. For 24 years, my life has been split into two parts, before Leo and after Leo. Before, our house in suburban New Jersey was loud. It smelled like my mom Aaliyah's cooking and my dad Julian's sawdust from the garage. It was the sound of me at 11 arguing with my 8-year-old brother over the Nintendo and him, Leo, running through the house making spaceship noises. He was that kind of kid, all energy, with a gap-toothed smile that could talk you out of being mad at him. That photo from the Empire State Building was taken in July 2001. It was the last perfect day. Leo had saved his allowance for weeks to buy that keychain. A little heavy, die-cast metal taxi. He thought it was the coolest thing in the world. He clipped it to the zipper of his favorite blue windbreaker, and that was that. It became a part of him. After was silence, October 12th, 2001. It was a Saturday. The air was crisp, that perfect bright autumn gold. The whole world was still reeling from 9/11, holding everyone a little tighter, and we were no exception. My dad was raking leaves in the front yard. My mom was inside, starting dinner. I was supposed to be watching Leo in the backyard. Supposed to be. But I was 11. I was too cool to play secret agent with my 8-year-old brother. I was sitting on the back deck reading a book, pointedly ignoring him. He had his blue windbreaker on. I remember the sound of the zipper, that little zeep as he ran around, the metal taxi keychain clicking against it. "Crystal, come see. I found the new base, Ignaz," he yelled. He was always finding bases in the strip of dense woods that started where our backyard ended. "Later, Leo. I'm reading," I said, not looking up. "You always say later." "Just go play?" Mom said don't go too far. I heard him sigh, a dramatic put-upon sound. Then I heard the rustle of leaves as he ran toward the tree line, the sound of the zipper, click, 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 fading. That was the last time I heard his voice. An hour later, my mom called out the back door. "Crystal, Julian, dinner." "Leo," I yelled, annoyed. "Time for dinner." Nothing, just the sound of the wind in the trees. That's when the silence started. The after. The next 48 hours were a blur of sirens, flashlights cutting through the woods, and the smell of stale coffee. Our neighborhood, our house, became a command center. Detective Marcus, a man with a kind face and eyes that had seen too much, sat at our dining room table. "Does he ever wander off?" he asked. "No," my mom, Aaliyah, said, her voice a thin thread. "He knows the rules. He doesn't go past the big oak tree." "Did he have any friends over? Did you see anyone strange in the neighborhood?" My dad, Julian, shook his head, his face pale. "No, nothing. It's like he was erased." They asked me, "Crystal, what did you see?" I was 11, and I was terrified. Not just of the police, but of the fact that I had been the one watching him, that I had told him to go play. I had a sudden, terrible image of my dad's angry face a few weeks earlier when he'd found us playing too close to the old storm culvert at the edge of the woods. "You stay away from there," he'd boomed. "It's dangerous." When Detective Marcus asked me if Leo ever played in the woods, I lied. "No," I said, staring at my sneakers. "He never goes in the woods." It was a stupid, childish lie born of panic. I didn't want to be the one to get in trouble, but that lie set the course for everything that followed, because if he wasn't in the woods, he must have gone out front. And if he went out front and no one saw him, he must have been taken. The abduction theory took root. A white van, a stranger. It was the only story that made sense. The searches in the woods were thorough, but they were looking for a lost boy, not not what had really happened. They searched the culvert, but it was October after a wet fall. It was half full of rushing water and debris. They poked it with sticks, looked inside with flashlights, and moved on. The dogs lost his scent at the road. Weeks turned into months, months into a year. The missing posters faded and peeled off the telephone poles. The news trucks left. My parents, they shattered. My dad became an obsessive, a man who spent every night online, on forums for missing children, charting sightings of white vans across the country. He papered Leo's room with maps. My mom just wilted. She'd sit in Leo's room holding his baseball glove and just rock. They divorced when I was 14. The silence in the house had become too heavy to share. I grew up. I'm 35 now, living in 2025. I'm an architect. I design buildings. I like straight lines, solid foundations, things that make sense, things that can't just vanish. I see my mom for brunch on Sundays and my dad for dinner on Wednesdays. We never, ever talk about Leo. We talk around him. He is the permanent 8-year-old ghost at every table. For 24 years, we lived with the what if. What if he was out there? What if he was suffering? The not knowing was a different kind of grief. It was grief with no funeral, no grave to visit. It was a wound that never, ever closed. Until last Tuesday. I was at my desk reviewing blueprints for a new library when my phone buzzed. Middletown PD. My blood went cold. I haven't lived in that town for 15 years, but my parents still do. "This is Crystal," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "Miss Crystal? My name is Detective Robert. I'm with the Middletown Police Department. I'm calling about your brother, Leo." My hand started to shake. I knocked over my coffee cup. "What? Did you find him?" My heart was hammering a frantic bird in my chest. "He's alive. He's 32. He's coming home." "Ma'am, I need you to come down to the station," Detective Robert said, his voice gentle. "It's better if we talk in person." That's the sentence they use when it's not good news. The drive to my old hometown was a nauseating fog. I called my dad. "The police called about Leo. Meet me at the station." I couldn't bring myself to call my mom. Not yet. My dad, Julian, was already there, pacing the lobby. He looked so much older than his 60 years. His hair is white, his face a roadmap of grief. "What is this, Crystal? Is it a hoax? Another false lead?" he asked, his hands fidgeting. "I don't know, Dad." Detective Robert led us into a small gray room. He was a younger man, maybe in his late 40s, with a tired kindness in his eyes. He wasn't Detective Marcus, but he had that same weight in his shoulders. "Mr. and Ms. Please sit down," he began. He slid a folder onto the table, but he didn't open it. "As you know," he said, the old Stanton Woods bordering your former property on Maple Drive, it was sold to a developer last year. They're clearing it for a new housing development." My dad scoffed. "We know. They're tearing up the past. What about it?" Detective Robert took a deep breath. "This morning, an excavation crew was clearing a section near the old storm drainage system, about 75 yards from your old property line. An operator found something. At first he thought it was just trash, but he called it in. He reached beside his desk and pulled up a clear plastic evidence bag. Inside was a small, black, muddy object. My dad leaned in, squinting. "What is that?" But I knew. My breath hitched. I couldn't breathe. My entire body went numb. It was caked in 24 years of dried mud and rust. The paint was almost all gone, but you could still see a chip of yellow. You could still see the unmistakable shape of a 1990s-era sedan. You could see the little metal ring at the top. "No," I whispered. "We checked the case file," Detective Roberts said softly. The original report mentioned your brother was attached to a specific item, a keychain. My dad stood up so fast his chair screeched and fell over. That's not possible, he barked. That's not possible. We searched those woods, every inch. The dogs lost the scent at the road. Dad, I said, my voice cracking. I couldn't take my eyes off the bag. It was his. The taxi. The operator found it tangled in a mass of old roots. The detective continued, right at the mouth of the old concrete culvert. It was buried under at least 2 feet of compacted silt and earth. No one would have seen it in 2001, not without digging. My dad was shaking his head, muttering, No, no, he was taken. Someone took him. They must have dropped it. The killer came back and dropped it. Julian, Detective Robert said, his voice firm but kind. The location, the way it was buried, it doesn't suggest it was dropped. It suggests it was lost there and that it's been there for a very, very long time. I just stared at the little yellow taxi, the boy on top of the world, my last good memory. It wasn't a clue to where he'd gone. It was the answer. He never left. The drive away from the station was silent. My dad gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white. The abduction theory, the white van, the online forums. That was the architecture of his life. It was the scaffolding that held him up, and Detective Robert had just taken a sledgehammer to it. He's wrong, Crystal, Dad said, his voice raw. That detective. He's young. He doesn't know. He wasn't there. I told him to check the registry, check the... He wasn't talking to me. He was talking to himself, trying to patch the holes. Dad, I said, my voice flat, where are we going? To the site. I'm going to see this for myself. This worker. David. I want to talk to him. The woods of my childhood were gone. In their place was a raw, red earth scar buzzing with the sound of machinery. Trucks and excavators crawled over the landscape like giant yellow insects. Detective Robert had called ahead. A man in a hard hat and a safety vest, David, was waiting for us at a chain-link fence. Mr. Julian, Miss Crystal, I'm David. Detective Robert told me you were coming. I'm so sorry. He was a man about my dad's age, with a weathered face and hands stained with grease. He held his hard hat in his hands, respectful. Show me, my dad commanded. David led us past the no trespassing signs, over the churned-up mud, to the edge of a deep excavation. A huge concrete pipe, 4 feet in diameter, was half unearthed, sticking out of the hillside. This is the old storm drain, David said, pointing. It's been dried up for a decade, but back in the day, this thing used to roar when it rained. We're replacing the whole system. He pointed down into the trench near the mouth of the pipe. I was digging right there. The roots of that old oak, he motioned to a massive uprooted stump nearby, were wrapped all around the pipe opening. I pulled the stump, and this whole mass of root and dirt came with it. I was breaking it up with the bucket when I saw this. He pointed to a specific spot. It was just stuck. A little piece of metal. I almost ignored it, but I've got grandkids. I don't know. Something just made me stop and get out. I pulled it free and, well, I knew what this land used to be. I knew the stories. I called my foreman right away. My dad stared at the hole. He was trembling. How far, he whispered. How far from the house? David looked back toward the road where our old neighborhood sat. From your old property line? I'd say maybe 70 yards. Just a straight shot from your old backyard. 70 yards, not miles, not another state. 70 yards. My legs gave out. I sat down hard on a pile of displaced dirt. All those years, all those nights, my dad at the computer, my mom crying in Leo's room, all those "have you seen this boy" flyers, all that agonizing, bottomless what if. He was 70 yards away. He could have just... My dad couldn't finish the sentence. He was just a kid, Julian, David said gently. Kids explore. It's a terrible, terrible place. This whole gully, it was a mess back then. Overgrown with thorns, slippery with mud. He wouldn't have stood a chance if he fell in and the water was high. My dad just nodded, his face crumbling. The monster he'd been chasing for 24 years wasn't a man in a van. It was a concrete pipe and a patch of slippery mud. Detective Robert reopened the case officially, but it wasn't a missing person case anymore. It was, as he put it, a recovery investigation. The keychain proves he was here, Robert explained to us back at the station, right at this culvert. Now we have to assume he entered the culvert. The working theory is that he fell, perhaps dropping his keychain and reaching for it, and was pulled into the pipe by the current. But the search, my dad started. The 2001 search was thorough, Robert cut in, holding up the old file. I've read it. They did check the culvert, but the water was high and it was full of debris. If he was trapped inside under the silt, they wouldn't have found him, not without a full excavation, and they had no reason to do one. The dogs lost the scent at the road, remember? Everyone thought abduction. Everyone, including me. My lie. He never goes in the woods. That one sentence from an 11-year-old girl. Did it matter? Did it change anything? What now? I asked. Now, Robert said. We searched the culvert. Properly. The next day, the construction stopped. The big yellow machines went silent. A new team arrived. White vans, but not the kind my dad had been looking for. These were from the State Forensics Unit. Anthropologists. People who specialized in finding the unfindable. They set up tents. They started a slow, painstaking excavation of the entire drainage pipe, which ran for 100 yards under the hill. They dug out the compacted earth section by section and sifted everything. My dad and I sat in his car parked on the road and just watched. We watched for 3 days. On the third day, Detective Robert walked over to the car. He didn't have to say anything. His face said it all. We found him, Julian, he said. Or what's left. We found small bone fragments lodged in the pipe about 20 feet in, buried under the silt. We also found this. He held up another, smaller evidence bag. Inside was a tiny, corroded piece of green fabric and a small, rusted piece of metal. A zipper pull. From his windbreaker, I whispered. The blue windbreaker. We'll need to run DNA against yours just to be 100%, Robert said. But this is him. I'm so sorry. He was here the whole time. It looks like it was fast. He was likely trapped by the debris and the water. He wouldn't have suffered. My dad laid his head on the steering wheel. He didn't make a sound, but his whole body shook. The hunt was over. His 24-year vigil was done. Now came the hardest part. Telling my mother. We drove to her small apartment. She opened the door, smiling. Crystal, Julian, what a surprise. Come in, I just made tea. She looked so normal. She'd found a fragile peace in the years since the divorce. She volunteered at the library. She had a garden. She had built a life. Around the black hole of Leo's disappearance. Now we were about to walk in and detonate it. We sat on her floral couch. My dad couldn't speak. He just stared at his hands. Mom, I started, my voice thick. They're clearing the old woods. Behind our old house. Aaliyah's smile faltered. She knew those woods. Oh, that's a shame. It was so beautiful. Mom, they found something. She put her teacup down. Her hand was perfectly steady. What? What did they find? They found his keychain, Mom. The taxi. She just looked at me. No tears, not yet. Just a deep, profound stillness, as if she was absorbing a blow. And they found him. My dad finally broke. A low animal sound of grief left his throat. In the culvert, Aaliyah. He was in the storm drain. He must have fallen. It was an accident. He was never... No one took him. My mom closed her eyes. She sat there silent for a full minute. I could hear the clock ticking on her mantel. When she opened her eyes, they were wet, but she wasn't hysterical. The tears just overflowed. An accident, she whispered. She said it like she was testing the word. An accident. She looked at my dad and then at me, and for the first time in 24 years, I saw something other than fear in her eyes. It was relief. He wasn't scared, she said, her voice trembling. He wasn't with a stranger. He didn't suffer. It was fast, Mom, I said, taking her hand. Detective Robert said it would have been fast. He just slipped. He's home, she whispered. My boy, he's finally home. We sat there, the three of us, on that floral couch, a broken family finally grieving the same thing. Not the what if, but the what was. There was one last thing, one last piece of truth. There's something I have to tell you, I said, my voice shaking. Something I did back then. They both looked at me confused. When Detective Marcus asked me if Leo ever played in the woods, I told him no. My dad frowned. What? Why? Because, I said, the 24-year-old shame burning in my throat. Because you had just yelled at us, Dad, for playing by the culvert. You told us to stay away. I knew he liked it there. He called it his secret base. When he yelled for me to come see, that's where he was. I ignored him. And when the police came, I was scared I would be in trouble, so I lied. My dad stared at me. I braced for the anger, the how could you? Instead, he just reached out and put his hand on mine, his rough, calloused hand. Oh, Crystal, he sighed, his voice full of a weariness I'd never heard before. We all lied, in our own way. What? I lied to myself, he said, looking at Mom. I told myself it had to be a stranger. It had to be a monster. Because if it wasn't, if it was just an accident, then it was my fault. My fault for having a yard that bordered the woods. My fault for not fencing it. My fault for not watching him every second. The abduction story. It was easier. It was easier to hunt a monster than to live with this. We all did it, my mom said, wiping her eyes. We told the story that let us get up in the morning. My lie hadn't changed the search. The dogs had lost the scent at the road. Anyway, a red herring that had sent everyone in the wrong direction. Even if I'd told the truth, they'd still search the culvert. They couldn't see him. The earth had taken him, and it hadn't been ready to let go. The DNA tests came back, a 1 in a billion match. It was Leo. We held a funeral a week later. It was small, just us, a few old neighbors who remembered, Detective Robert, and even David, the construction worker, who stood respectfully in the back. We buried an urn. It wasn't an empty casket this time. We had a headstone carved. Leo, our son, our brother, 1993-2001, found. My parents stood side by side. They're not getting back together. Too much time has passed. But they held hands. After, I went back to my apartment. The silence in my apartment doesn't feel haunted anymore. It just feels quiet. Detective Robert gave me the keychain. It's been cleaned. It sits on my desk in a small wooden box, that little yellow taxi. For 24 years, I looked at that photo from the Empire State Building, the one of him holding it up, and all I felt was this aching, terrifying void, the not knowing. Now I look at the photo and I see my brother. I see his gap-toothed smile. I see the last good day. The story is over. The what if is gone. It's not a happy ending, but it is an ending. And after half a lifetime of living in a question mark, an ending is a strange and precious kind of peace. What would you have done? If you were the one who held that tiny, selfish lie for 24 years, could you have ever forgiven yourself? Subscribe if you believe every truth, no matter how painful, eventually surfaces.